Welcome to the Midweek message. So good to be with you again. And whenever I do these, people think like, I've had the life of a clown, but it's not really. All I'm doing is I take real life experiences and I try to see where can I find some good in this situation. And one of the things I want to talk to you about today is learning to let go of certain things. Okay, and how am I going to get there is by telling you about electricity. Electricity is wonderful. It is the best thing ever. When it's running through your house and it's lighting up and it's doing the stove and the TV and all those things, it is awesome. When it's busy running through your body, it has sort of a different effect. It's not that great then. And over the course of my life, I've had many interactions with electricity, been shocked by it, and I remember one case in point, and I might have told some of these stories in church, but that's okay. I remember on one occasion as a young boy, I loved getting on the roof of a house, and I wasn't allowed to. My mom used to moan at me. But we stayed in a really old house, and the electricity that came into the house was actually on the roof still, and the wires would run to the house. And not thinking one day, I walked over barefoot, and as I stepped over the top of the roof onto the other side, I put my foot on this thing, and man, like that, I was down and I was rolling off that roof. I remember in an instant thinking my foot is going to break off because it bent over that little ball that I stood on like that. Fortunately, I fell and I rolled off the roof again. Luckily, it was the lowest point and onto the grass. And I was in agony. Not from the electricity shock as much as what I was from the fall, but I couldn't tell Mama because Mama would hit me no matter how injured I am. She would give me a jolly good hiding. And then every single year, now before I get to every single year, I remember another instance where I had to mow the lawn, but we didn't have we didn't have a petrol lawnmower, we had an electric lawnmower. And this stupid cable would always be in the way. I don't know how many of you battle with it. Man, I cannot get it right that this cable would stay on my left or on my right. I'll always have to flip it around or pull it or take the lawnmower under it. And one day I must have been in a hurry again. I always was, because I always wanted to go play and be naughty. And I rode over the cable. And that wasn't a bad thing because I'd done that often. You could see by the amount of joints in the cable. And usually it would tip the lights immediately. And this day it didn't. And as I walked back barefoot, I stood on the piece of wire, unfortunately the one that was still plugged in. Man, that I squealed like a little girl. I remember actually having 2 burn marks under my foot from that episode. And then as I got older, I didn't learn my lesson. My wife has got an affinity, let's call it an affinity for Christmas lights. She absolutely adores them. So when we were living in Gauteng still, every year I had to decorate the house come Christmas time. And if we ever came close to divorce, it was in those times when I had to put up the Christmas lights because I hated doing it. And every year I would shock myself. And every year I promised, this year I'm going to be careful. It's not going to happen again. But stupid Paul, all I had to do was go put off the mains, but I was too filled with pride or whatever, and every year I would leave them on thinking, I'm going to be so careful in joining these wires and connecting this light to that light so they all go on together. And every year I would have this shocking experience. But I didn't learn. But there was one instance that this is actually the story I want to tell, where my friend and I were welding one day, and we welded together often. Look, I cannot weld. I was the gopher. I would get the tools and I would hold the metal together, and I cannot weld. It is a skill beyond me. So here I am holding these two pieces of metal, and he's gonna weld the corner. And I don't know what happened that day. If it was the machine, if it was, I don't know. But as he brought that welding rod down, and it arced or touched that metal, instantaneously, I had this electricity that was supposed to be welding, busy gunning me, and I'm shaking, and I started squealing, or so I heard afterwards. I sounded like a pig that had been stabbed. I sounded like a little girl that's discovered her Barbie is gone. I was squealing, but I couldn't let go. My hands were gripped around it, and I couldn't get my hands open. In fact, I was useless. I could do nothing. So there I am. And eventually, my friend realizes, and he bumps me over. And with that bump, I released that metal. Man, I have never been shocked like that in my life before. It was the worst ever. It reminds me of the story of that guy who wants to impress his girls. There's a little video clip going around, and he walks, he saunters past them. Come on, guys, you know what I'm talking about. You know, like you got your chest out, you got your best swagger going, and he looks at these girls, and there's a fence ahead of him, so he casually reaches out while flexing some muscles, and he touches that fence, but it's an electric fence, and you can see him there. He's doing Night Fever and Footloose and Step Up 1, 2, 3, and 4. He's doing them all, and he's been shaken, and eventually he lets go. But his pose after that, he sort of just looks at them, and he saunters off again, trying to keep his ego intact. It reminds me of that, but he managed to let go. And I couldn't let go because my fingers had curved around that, and with a shock, I couldn't let go. It's only when someone kicked me over that I could let go of the shocking experience. And that's what I want to talk about. There's some things in your life that you need to let go of. They're going to cause you harm if you don't learn to let go. In fact, I want to leave this with you. There's some things you need to let go. Some people you might need to let go, but you also need to let God, and let God in. Let Him fill your hands with those things that you've been holding on to. You know what they are. Let go. May you be blessed.